What happens to your brain when you start reading? 10 incredible facts. First fact: the visual cortex comes to life. Reading begins with the eyes, but it is the visual cortex, located at the back of the brain, that translates letters into recognizable shapes. It transforms symbols into mental images, allowing the brain to associate each shape with a sound or meaning. It's as if the brain lights up each letter, creating a line of light that leads to understanding. Second fact: Broca's area comes into action. As soon as words take shape, Broca's area comes into play, responsible for speech production and the interpretation of grammatical structure. Even if you read silently, this area is activated, simulating an inner voice. That's why sometimes you hear the words in your head while reading. Third fact: Wernicke's area translates meaning. Wernicke's area, located in the temporal lobe, is the center of comprehension. It connects words to meanings and contexts. This part of the brain creates coherence, transforming sentences into ideas and stories into emotional experiences. Fourth fact: the prefrontal cortex analyzes and interprets. Now that you understand the words, the prefrontal cortex comes into play. It analyzes the content, creates judgments, opinions, and reflections. It decides whether the text is funny, inspiring, or disturbing. This region is the epicenter of critical thinking, and reading is its best training. Fifth fact: the hippocampus stores information. Located in the limbic system, the hippocampus functions as a memory archive. It stores important passages, new information, and even the emotional context of each reading. When you remember a scene from a book years later, it is the hippocampus that has stored that memory. Sixth fact: mirror neurons react to emotions. During an emotionally charged reading experience, your mirror neurons mimic the sensations described in the text. If a character feels fear, pain, or joy, your brain responds as if you were experiencing it. This is the basis of the empathy generated by reading. You literally feel what you read. Seventh fact: the brain creates new neural connections. Each new word, each new concept, reinforces and creates new synapses. Reading is like lifting weights for the brain. It strengthens the connections between neurons and stimulates neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and evolve throughout life. Eighth fact: reading reduces stress and anxiety. Studies show that reading for just 6 minutes can reduce stress by up to 68%. This happens because the brain enters a state of relaxed focus, where brain waves slow down and the mind immerses itself in a flow of deep concentration. Ninth fact: vocabulary expands verbal intelligence. Each page expands the bank of words stored in the brain. This richer vocabulary increases verbal intelligence, improves communication, and even the ability to solve complex problems. The regular reader speaks better, thinks faster, and expresses themselves more precisely. 10th fact: the brain physically transforms. Reading literally changes the structure of the brain. Magnetic resonance imaging shows that frequent readers develop more white matter, a network of fibers that accelerates the transmission of information. In other words, the more you read, the more efficient, creative, and powerful your brain becomes. Want to see what else happens to your brain when you start reading and other amazing things about your mind? Click the links below.